While many reject the notion that extraterrestrials are attempting to interbreed with humans, some believe that this is their main or even only reason for making contact with us. One Oxford University academic has stated that aliens are breeding with Earth's human population. This, he says, is in order to produce a hybrid species which is capable of saving our planet from major disasters such as climate change and nuclear war. He states that as aliens and humans share the same biosphere, these potentially cataclysmic problems would have a negative impact on our extraterrestrial counterparts. This, he argues, explains their increasing interference in human affairs. It is based on a growing concern for their own survival. As such, Dr. Young-Hai Chi, who is an instructor in Korean at Oxford's Oriental Institute, believes there is a strong correlation between our environmental challenges and alien abductions. He claims that the primary aim of the extraterrestrials is to ensure their own survival, but in doing so could also protect the human race. His extraordinary claim is that interplanetary aliens have created a new hybrid human form and are intent on taking over the Earth should it eventuate that climate change destroys us. The Oxford student newspaper reported that Dr. Chi first put forward his theory in a lecture in 2012 when he quoted a US abduction researcher who claims that the hybrids are already walking among us. His belief is that the timing of increased extraterrestrial contact coincides with the Earth facing our major existential problems. What he calls the ET's hybrid project is, in his opinion, a response to the impending demise of human civilization as described in his book entitled Alien Visitations and the End of Humanity. To be more specific, he has 3 theories for the aliens' concerted campaign. One is that they deem our DNA is valuable for the preservation of the stock, while secondly, they wish to create a species which can survive future climate conditions. Thirdly, he states that some abductees report that these hybrids have a very high intelligence, so the production of these beings could result in high-functioning problem solvers, even a future leader. There's no doubt that many abductees' accounts do include an incident of alien harvesting of reproductive material, such as women's eggs or human sperm. The following are 2 accounts from very long-term abductees whose contact began as children, but in adulthood developed to a seeming quest for DNA. Audrey and Debbie. After decades of anonymity, sisters Audrey and Debbie Hewins, identical twins, have gone public on their virtual lifetimes of abductions by extraterrestrials. The pair claim to have been taken on board spaceships of all kinds and to having experienced these encounters since the age of 4 or 5 years old. Audrey has related how she and Debbie were visited by grey aliens throughout their childhood in Athens, Ohio. She has said that the girls would tell their parents, "We don't want to go to bed because the bald men are coming." The 2 women remember the first time they were visited, with Audrey describing that her bedroom was flooded with an intensely bright blue light that filled the room. Her door would open and then the rest of the house would be filled with a foggy kind of light which was also blue in colour. They were also able to hear a buzzing or droning sound like that from a hive of bees, as well as incoherent voices. These were as if preparing her for the awareness that they were not alone. Both sisters described the bald men as being humanoid in form, one taller than the other, and both wearing black cloaks. Their skin was grey in colour, and they had bulbous heads and large black eyes. The species of alien they described is that of what have become known as the Greys, a race of extraterrestrials characterised by the greyish colour of their skin. The aliens would then lead the girls outside and onto their spaceship. The twins received visitations from the Greys throughout their childhood and were also abducted on some occasions. Both girls would be taken, and it was when they were transported up above their house that they realised that these beings were not normal human men, and also that they were not from Earth. Soon terrified of these bizarre and frightening events, Audrey and Debbie would beg their parents that they not have to go to bed or not sleep in that bedroom because of the bald men. Their parents attributed their fearful responses to overactive imaginations, so that the two girls faced scepticism from the start, which perhaps led to them remaining silent and incognito for so many years. The Hewins' abduction experiences would continue into adulthood, and they still continue today. Sometimes the sisters would be taken aboard together, while in other incidents only one of them would go on the journey. There were even occasions when they would be taken separately with their abductors and then meet up on board a spaceship as it sped through the stars. In a 2011 interview, the sisters recounted an incident wherein the now adult women, who have established a support group for experiences, witnessed what they called artificial gestation chambers. One reported waking up in the middle of a reproductive procedure, both painful and terrifying, wherein she felt that her ovaries were being scraped. From that particular contact, the sisters believed they had been turned into breeders, their eggs taken and embryos implanted into their bodies. With their doctors allegedly finding unexplained scarring, the women felt they were being used to incubate the early stages of hybrid embryos. Raymond, not his real name, had his first experience of extraterrestrial contact in 1953 at the age of 6. Much later, interviews with Preston Dennett, who worked as a Mutual UFO Network field investigator, resulted in Raymond's inclusion in Dennett's book entitled Onboard UFO Encounters. Raymond's family lived in San Fernando, Southern California, and his encounters began when, as a small child, a neighbour gave him an unusual-looking pen light. He found that when he flashed it on and off twice in the direction of a nearby dam, an answering light flashed back. Astonishing, the following day he and a group of playmates spotted a strange shiny silver disc hovering nearby. Through portholes all around the disc, the boys could see 3 figures in dark uniforms who waved back at them with unusually long arms. The craft then descended with a falling leaf motion, coming to rest at the base of the dam. Unlike the other kids who ran away, Raymond clambered around the object and was finally able to enter it via a small opening. Inside were beautiful pulsating lights of magenta, pink, gold and red, and he remembers walking on grating as he was taken around and down inside the craft. This experience began a series of abductions wherein he would be floated out of his home and drawn into the craft. There he would be placed in a dentist-like chair where he was examined, sometimes extremely painfully. He described the beings as short and pinkish beige in colour, with skin like plastic and dark wraparound eyes. However, in later years, greys turned their attention to Raymond. In around his mid-30s, he was floated into a craft where an extremely attractive woman made seductive advances, a woman who seemed able to only grunt and hiss. Despite the temptation, Raymond refused on the grounds of his Christian faith and marriage vows, whereupon a grey quickly removed him from the room. However, in another chamber, Raymond was shocked to see a wall lined with many large aquarium-like tanks, each containing an advanced fetus or baby suspended in a turquoise-coloured bubbling liquid. Chillingly, each turned to look at him with open eyes as he entered the room. They were obviously alive and breathing underwater. Having by now researched the UF phenomenon, Raymond's immediate thought was that these were the missing fetuses removed from female abductees. Perhaps the woman he had just encountered had also started out as one of these hybrids. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit like. It really helps to keep the channel growing. And if you're new here, subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest videos. We've got lots of strange and fascinating stories coming up, and we'd love to have you along for the journey.
And now we have a bonus story for you. When Edna Rowe was 14 in 1942, she lived at 132 Young Street, Redfern, which was an inner suburb of Sydney in New South Wales, Australia. During her time there, she encountered many strange events. It was an old house with 3 bedrooms upstairs. Her sister Ronnie had a 3-year-old son who started to see things and would see people that nobody else could. He would see a man with a bandage on his head who stood at the top of the stairs and would wake his mother up whenever the man appeared. They asked him to describe the man in detail, and judging by his description, it appears he was describing a man wearing a turban. He also described another man that stood by his bed who wore what he described as pyjamas. Her son was certain that he could see these people, which terrified his mother, but her son was not at all scared by his unusual companions. Edna didn't need convincing because she herself was experiencing something strange herself in her bedroom. Firstly, her room would go freezing cold before a large mass would bear down on her as she was lying in bed. Although she could not see anything, she could feel a great cloud slowly envelop her when she would go stiff and could not move her arms or legs and could not even open her eyes. It always started as the room went cold, and it went on for years. She even questioned neighbours about the history of the house in the hope of finding a clue, but learned nothing. In 1946, when she was 18, she married an English sailor and became Edna Monk. She moved to England and was introduced to his grandmother, who took one look at her and said, "I've read your aura, and you're one of us," which confused Edna at the time, but it appears that Edna may be psychic, which could be the reason why she was experiencing her strange paranormal events. The couple lived in England for 12 years before moving back to Australia in 1958 with their 2 children, a boy aged 6 and a girl aged 7. They moved in with Edna's mother back at her old house at 132 Young Street, Redfern. Her husband Eddie was able to find shift work, which meant that he had to work in the evening, leaving Edna alone at night with the children. On her first night alone, the room started to get freezing cold, and Edna thought, "It's happening all over again," and she experienced the exact same event that she had when she was 14, with the cloud descending and enveloping her, followed by the stiffening of her limbs and not being able to open her eyes. It appeared to last an eternity before she came out of it. Over the following 4 months it happened on 4 more occasions, but only when her husband was at work. She did not tell anybody about her ordeal. A month later the room started to go cold as the cloud slowly descended. She said, "Can I help you? Are you troubled?" The cloud appeared to stop above her, and after a short while it evaporated and everything returned to normal. Why did it abruptly stop after she spoke to it? It visited her again a week later, and she repeated what she did the week before, and it again immediately evaporated, and that was the last time she experienced it. They lived at the address for 4 more years without any further incidents. In 1962, the family moved to a flat in Coogee, a few kilometres away, and then to a housing commission flat in the same suburb in 1975. After leaving Young Street, Eddie experienced no further incidents, believing it was now history. For the next 20 years, Edna experienced no more problems. By this stage, her children had left home, and her husband Eddie had become extremely ill with cancer and died in June 1986. Edna thought that her haunted past was behind her, but a few months after her husband's death, something strange happened to her that brought everything rushing back. She was again to experience supernatural events. One night she was in bed reading until 2 a.m. in the morning. She switched off the light and tried to sleep, but remained restless until 3 a.m. She then felt the mattress deepen next to her, as if somebody had suddenly laid down and was pushing against the side of her. She then saw a beautiful light which was unlike any sort of light she had ever seen. The light did not fill the room, only the part next to her above the bed. The rest of the room was still in darkness. Then in the middle of the light she could clearly see her husband Eddie. He was laying down facing her. He looked much younger than the last time she saw him, when he was dying with cancer. He had more hair and had a suntan, and his eyes were bright blue, just as she had remembered when they were young. He was smiling at her and seemed to radiate a wonderful feeling of love. It was a kind of physical love that she remembered before he got very ill. Unfortunately, the moment she blinked her eyes, he immediately vanished and the room returned to its normal state. Edna swears that what she experienced was not a dream. Then other strange things started to happen in her flat that defied any explanation. She would put things down and then find them somewhere else. Initially, she thought it was her being absent-minded, but when you've lived alone in a flat for many years and have the same daily routine, any new sound or change in your pattern made you realize that something very strange was going on. The first experience was one evening when one of the pot plants which she kept in the bathroom suddenly crashed to the floor. She knew it could not have fallen by itself because it was securely supported against the back of the wall. Happening only once made her believe it was a one-off incident, but when it happened again, she became suspicious. This time it was the other pot that had landed in the exact same position on the floor as the other one, but this time on the left side. It too had been hard up against the wall. So what made them move? She would find books that she'd been reading in the lounge and suddenly appear in other rooms that she never went into. She felt that she had an uninvited guest in her home. Searching for her keys became an eerie game of hide and seek. At first she was annoyed, but later felt that her guest was more mischievous than threatening, and was nothing like the negative force that she felt in Young Street. On another occasion, Edna placed the keys on a table near the kitchen as she entered the flat, which she normally did. But when she later went to pick them up, they'd vanished. She searched everywhere, but could not locate them. She sat down at the table and was resigned to the fact that they had disappeared. As she was dressing her legs, she touched her slippers, which she had left on the floor the previous night. She heard a slight tinkle and crawled under the table to retrieve her slippers, and to her utter astonishment found the keys in one of the slippers. One day her son was visiting with his family and told him she could get a spare key for him in case of an emergency. Nothing was done about it though. One day when they had all been at the beach, her son and his family went directly to their room, and Edna placed the keys on the table and then joined the rest of the family. Later, when she went to pick up the keys, she found that the front door key had somehow detached itself from the other keys and was lying by itself a few centimetres away. The key ring was still fastened, and there was no possible explanation to how the key could have separated itself from the other keys on the ring. Was the mischievous guest reminding her about getting her spare key cut? After that incident, the disturbances continued. One day a sister came down from Darwin to stay with her for a while, and one morning they were picking up some clothes to do some washing, and she couldn't find her underwear. After searching everywhere for them, they eventually gave up looking. A short time later she returned to the bedroom and found her underwear on the quilt at the bottom of the bed. That same afternoon, her sister wanted to confirm her flight back to Darwin and look for her ticket, which she put on the side pocket of her travel bag, but it was not there. They searched everywhere without any luck. After taking a break from looking, they decided to have a cup of tea. When she went back to her room, she found the ticket sitting on the pillow. One day in 1990, her daughter had sent her some flowers for Mother's Day, which she placed in a vase on top of the TV. But a short time later, she found the flowers on the floor in front of the TV. But they were not in an untidy heap as one might expect, but were in a neat pile. She does not believe it was her late husband causing her mischief, but it was the work of some prankster. Eddie was quite a serious person when he was alive and would have been out of character. So, did Edna experience these strange paranormal events because she was genuinely psychic? Or was it the case that the houses she stayed at were simply haunted?